Hello everybody, I'm just some guy and I'm going to be reviewing Iceman number 3. So let's get to this book because, oh boy, I had a feeling after reading the first 2 issues of Iceman that this book wasn't going to go well. It's not so much that the book is bad, it really isn't. I mean, it isn't great, it's not anything I tell anybody to check out, but it's not horrible. It's kind of like Dr. Pepper. You can drink it if you want, but you'd rather have Coke. Coca-Cola or Blow. Either one's way better than Dr. Pepper. The problem I've got with this book is that it has no point. Let me explain. Whenever you tell a story that deals with the fantastic, science fiction, fantasy, whatever, you need a reason to set it in that world. Now, any good science fiction story or fantasy story works if you take away the fantastic. Think about Star Wars. You can tell a story about a farm boy getting dragged into a rebellion without the science fiction. Think about Game of Thrones. You can tell a story about royals or nobles fighting each other without the fantasy. But if you pull out the fantastic, the plots fall apart. Look at Star Wars. Take out the Force, the whole plot shatters. There goes Vader, there goes Obi-Wan. Take away the droids, and you have no reason for Luke to leave the farm. Take away the Death Star, there goes your climax. And that's just one film. Empire wouldn't work. Return of the Jedi wouldn't work. The prequels wouldn't work. You couldn't even have Anakin Skywalker because he's created through the Force. Look at Game of Thrones. Now it's a low fantasy setting. Until you see dragons and White Walkers, there's really no magic there. The closest thing you have to the fantastic when the story begins, be it in the books or on the show, are the direwolves. But you can kind of work your way around that. Maybe the direwolves didn't die out in that universe. But when you get to Jon Snow at the Wall, if you have no White Walkers, Jon Snow's story, done. You get to Daenerys Targaryen, what about her and her dragons? Look at someone like Bran. You can get around his visions by saying he's hallucinating, but once he starts hallucinating about things that actually happened or will happen, you're done. How do you explain Arya? She's pulling faces off. That doesn't work without the fantastic. All these elements, all these plot points function within the realm in which they're set. If you just want to tell a story about a farm boy participating in a rebellion, you don't need to set it on Tatooine. If you want to tell a story about nobles fighting each other, you don't need to set it in Westeros. But if you are going to put a story in those fictional settings, it needs a reason to be there. This is where what happens in the Iceman book becomes a real problem. It's set in the Marvel Universe, one of the most diverse universes ever created in fiction, and you've got mutants, the most disliked minority in the Marvel U. But the Iceman story is really about Iceman being gay. It has nothing to do with him being a mutant, has nothing to do with him being a superhero. So why is this story being told with this character in this universe? That's the fundamental problem with this book. Sina Grace, the writer, wants to tell a coming out story. His coming out story. And he's actually done it before. He's written a couple of books, and the ones he's most known for are his autobiographical stories about himself coming out in his mid-20s. That's around the same age Iceman is supposed to be, and I guess that's why Marvel hired Grace. The problem is Grace has no real interest in telling the superhero story. He has no real interest in telling a mutant story. He's desperate to tell this coming out story, but not only that, it's like he's stuck in a time warp and doesn't realize it's 2017, not 1992. So everything he does is based around this dated plot, like he wrote an HBO special that they just decided to air after 25 years. Everybody talks in this way that bears no relation to how people talk about homosexuality today. So, to get back to my point, if you're going to tell a story in the Marvel Universe, you need a reason to do it. And Sina Grace isn't doing that. He ends up with a story that doesn't work because the character he's using, A, isn't gay, B, would be more concerned about his mutation than his sexuality, and C, is a superhero. At the end of the day, you've got to deal with that. Now, let's put this in perspective. In the Marvel U, mutants are the most despised minority in the world. Anyone who's a mutant would be more concerned about their mutation than their race or sexuality, ethnicity, sex, religion, or what have you, because one of those will get them killed before the others, and it's the one that gives them the superpowers. If you really want to have one of those elements there, say sexuality, then you really don't need superpowers. You can just tell that story, and at that point, why are you setting it in the Marvel U? The powers serve no purpose. So when there are scenes where Iceman uses his powers, they're just tacked on. You could just take them out and it wouldn't change anything. Like I said, the book isn't terrible. It's mediocre. But what causes it to have this inherent flaw is that Sina Grace uses Iceman's mutation as a metaphor for being gay, as he has Iceman himself also use the mutation as a metaphor for being gay, as he also has Iceman openly talk about being gay. So Grace is doing 3 things at once when he really doesn't need to. It's obvious that every reference to mutant is meant to be code for gay. If it's not coming out of Bobby's mouth, then it's coming from his parents or the villains. And what's weird is that Grace really wants to tell this coming out story, but he won't do it. Instead, he uses mutant as a metaphor for something actually being discussed in the comic. Iceman is telling people he's gay. He's texting and chatting and sending booty calls. Why are you hiding it behind his mutation when he's talking about it 3 issues into it? So this is what we have. This isn't an Iceman story, it's a Bobby Drake story. Bobby doesn't need superpowers for the story to work, but because it's said in the Marvel U at some point he's got to use them. So completely random, pointless fights happen, and they feel just as tacked on as they sound. And we're going to go through the comics so you can see what I'm talking about and see why the book isn't working. So let's start with the cover. Of the 3 covers that are out now, this isn't that bad. It gets the job done, but it's nothing to really talk about. Then we get to the credits page, and I'm going to be honest, I was completely distracted by this artwork. It's like, do you not know how to draw hands? The page doesn't say who drew it, maybe I'm missing it, but seriously, learn to draw hands. So the book is written by Sina Grace and drawn by Alessandro Vitti. What I really want people to pay attention to is that this book has 4 editors. It has an assistant editor, Chris Robinson, 2 regular editors, Daniel Ketchum and Darren Shan, and X-Men group editor, Mark Panacea. 4 people read this book and went, yeah, let's publish that. Again, the book isn't unreadable, it's just vanilla. But it's a book that thinks that it's more taboo and out there than it really is. The best way to describe it is like if you have a woman who's very well kept, she's a good girl, like a good Christian girl, and she's like, I can be a slut. Can you? So she strips down and gets to her bra and granny panties and starts walking over. And she's trying to do that sexy saunter, but she's got no rhythm, so it just looks like a pee dance. And she's like, do you find me sexy? Does this turn you on? No, it doesn't. Literally, my bones have gone soft. That's how not turned on I am. This is what this book is. It's like someone who thinks they're hot, but they're not. But let's read the intro. Previously in Iceman, saving kids and beating up bigots is all in a day's work, but talking about feelings? Now that's scary. However, after a heart-to-heart with his ex-girlfriend Kitty Pryde, Bobby is beginning to realize that the road to self-discovery and acceptance isn't one that he has to walk alone. Right. So Bobby's been part of the X-Men since he was 14. He's been dealing with his parents hating him because he's a mutant for half his life, but you're right. It's only now that he's decided, or Jean Grey decided for him, that he's gay, that he's going to deal with that. All that other time? Fuck it. So we get this completely random splash page. I don't know why it's here because it isn't telling us anything a small establishing panel couldn't achieve. It would have been better to open the book with profile pics of the people that Bobby's texting than having him standing like a jackass in the front lawn. What really bugs me about the page is the art. You can see this high contrast with the shadows and thick line weight with the background, but the lines on Bobby are pretty thin. It makes him pop from the background, and that's probably the point, but it feels like 2 different art styles put together. But I want to read these captions because the first little exchange points out another problem I have with this book. Bobby texts, hey, I know we haven't talked in a while. Everyone's been busy. Sorry to do this over text message, but I wanted to beat the grapevine and tell you that I'm gay. It's a process I'm still going through, but I want to reach out. If you want to talk, I'm around. Then he gets a response from Jean-Paul, and I'm going to get to this in another video because it really does bother me. Jean-Paul is North Star. North Star is gayer than a bag of Skittles, and that was a character shtick that he was this effeminate Canadian mutant. A few years ago, Marvel had him get married. This happened around the same time that DC Comics blocked J.H. Williams from marrying Batwoman to I think Renee Montoya. Marvel took full advantage of that and went through all this trouble to contact media outlets who don't care about comics and say, oh, we're having one of our characters get gay married, and then he's out of the books. I'm sure he appeared a few more times, but he has not been prominent or got his own title at all, and it's been about 5 years. And this is just one of the characters Marvel has done this with, who's gay, and they made a point of letting not just the audience, but news networks know what they did, and then the characters are nowhere to be found. But back to Jean-Paul. Jean-Paul says, process my butt. We need to get coffee and discuss IRL. Opal, one of Bobby's exes, says, had no clue. Cool, I guess. Jonas Storm, flame on, literally, haha. Yeah, that's a lame joke. Lorna, that's Polaris. She says, a part of me always kind of thought so. That's probably why I picked Alex. It's kind of a burn. Nice burn, too. But Spidey has the best. He says, huh, you'd think your fashion sense would tingle a little harder. I like that. It's kind of mean, but it's true. Bobby has had the worst X-Men costumes outside of Kitty Pryde. He's either been butt naked except for a Speedo and some footies, or he's had a leather jacket and some pants with no shirts, or he wore compression shorts and no shoes. His X-Factor suit was so lazy that him and Cyclops could have just swapped colors, and that's what they really did. So as we get to the next page, we get the first of these incredibly bizarre drawings of his parents. The art is really inconsistent, so it wavers from normal face to constipated. And again, the line weight on the figures just doesn't match the background. It's not that the art is bad, it just stands out in this really odd way. And again, it's like it's two different art styles put together. So we get this exchange between Bobby and his mom where he's clearly defensive and she's trying to be accommodating. And he's just ready to go. He sees that there are all these pictures of him from when he was in high school, and his mom says, the good old days. And he's like, what's that supposed to mean? And she tells him to stop being defensive because that was the last time we were a unit, when you lived with us and had the whole world ahead of you, before my boy had to fight for, quote, the cause. This kind of banter goes on for 2 pages, and the art is just weird. Dad has a super constipated look on his face, and he's got pills on the table. It's in 2 panels, so it's not just me. How jacked up is your health when you need pills next to a salt shaker? Like, my health is so fucked up, if I eat one more of these tasteless brown communion wafers, I'm gonna die. Bobby tries to explain to his dad what happened in the last issue, and Dad's having no part of it. And Bobby tells him that like 90% of what he does is mutant related, so it's basically you two and the barista at a Coffee A Go-Go who don't fall into that category. And that little banter is exactly what I meant when I said that mutant is code for gay. Yes, in context it makes sense, but it's still obvious that really Grace is talking about homosexuality. And we can tell because Bobby's dad follows up with, it's on the news all the time. I see posters and flyers all over town for rallies and whatnot. You get to be you all the time. No one's mad about it anymore. So why can't we talk about something normal? And on the next page, he says, you want to do the right thing. I love that about you. Don't get me wrong. But why do you have to do it the way that you do? Like you're all in a parade. Look, I don't have a problem with anyone having this type of conversation. It's that Bobby's supposed to be coming out in this story. So it makes more sense for his dad to be blatantly homophobic than anti-mutant, since that's what the story's supposed to be about. But Cena Grace won't commit to that just yet. So instead, we get the mutant angle that's really code for the gay angle. Meanwhile, the subtext of the conversation is that Bobby is trying to work up the courage to tell them that he's not just a mutant, but also gay. He's also using his mutation as code. Either talk about his sexuality or take it out of the story. After this banter, Bobby calls it quits, gets up and washes the dishes, and then this 14-page pointless fight happens. Somehow, the Purifiers found out where Bobby's parents live and decided to attack during the break in this totally not about being gay mutation argument. Bobby ices the guy's face, then breaks the ice, and then demands to know how many of the Purifiers showed up. The guy tells him that there's a dozen there, and Bobby freezes the guy's hands. Now, I noticed another inconsistency with this page and the next. Iceman has an ice belt in one page, but it's gone on the next, and this keeps shifting throughout the rest of the book, which is weird because it becomes important at the end of the story. Then we get this weird rant from the head purifier. He's actually the father of the purifier from the first issue. He says to Bobby's folks, not too long ago my son was following orders, honoring God's plan, and then your son came and ganged up on my son. Yeah, that's not how it happened. I get that the point is to make the guy look stupid and unhinged, but come on. You can't gang up on someone if it's just one of you. Iceman just whooped the guy's ass. It took him 7 pages to do it, but he did eventually get it done. Iceman tries this little ice trick and the dude catches it, and Iceman comes out with his hands de-iced and still makes lame jokes. Bobby's mom offers the purifier money, and the guy couldn't care less about that. He's pissed that his boy is in jail and disgraced. This, again, is like another part right out of the 90s. This is what people would think Christians would do to gay people back then. And I get it, maybe when Grace came out, he had to deal with this type of Christian. But let's be real for a minute. These aren't the theists you're looking for. It's not Christians doing that today. It's another group of people. No, not the Jews. The other one. The one we're not allowed to talk about because YouTube will demonetize your videos if you do. That one. Those will be the ones doing this, not this dated religious nut here. So Bobby's dad fakes a heart attack and uses a coal shovel to take out one of the purifiers. The chief douchebag purifier grabs him, and Bobby's dad recounts this story about the dean at his school that he went to when he was a kid. And the dean would beat the kids, which Bobby's dad said they needed anyway. And the guy would hide the letters the parents sent and write fake ones back so the parents wouldn't come and visit. He starved the kids for a day. This is a dated 90s reference. Religion isn't usually what makes people kill mutants in the Marvel Universe. This is more of a mutant for gay analog again. And not only is it another underhanded commentary on homosexuality, But the people in the world who throw gay people, usually men and boys, off of roofs and stone them to death when they don't die when they hit the ground, they don't wear crosses. I get that Marvel and Grace might want to dance around that, but this isn't the group doing this to gay people today, and it's kind of dishonest to play that kind of game. At any rate, this fight has been going on for about 5 pages, and Iceman finally decides to show off and show he's so powerful that he could have taken these guys out at any point. He even says that to the big douchebag Purifier. I don't need my hands to freeze the capillaries in your brains. The problem here is that Bobby destroys his parents' home. He completely wrecks it for no fucking reason. He couldn't just freeze them in place. He's got such control over his powers at this point that he can freeze things without using his hands. We see him using ice to creep up on this guy's body, stopping bullets in midair. So you mean to tell me you couldn't have just frozen the trigger to the gun so it wouldn't have gone off to protect your parents? And in the previous encounter with the Purifiers, the guy had armor conveniently made to cock-block Iceman's powers. But these guys roll up on Bobby's parents' house knowing Iceman is inside, and they just left the ice-blocking armor at home. Iceman is able to crack the Chief Purifier's armor and freeze burn an X on his chest. We're branding people now. The X-Men, Iceman, Bobby, of all the X-Men, Bobby. This is so completely out of his character, and it's just unbelievable that it's even in the book. And the Purifier is totally not fazed by it. He says he's going to wear it as a badge of courage, but Bobby's magically disappearing, reappearing X-Belt will be a target because at the end of the day, the X-Men will never be welcome. You will all be hunted. Okay, then why is this book about Bobby coming out? This is a way more interesting story, this mutant thing. In the Marvel U at present, mutants are more hated than they've ever been because of what happened with the mutants and the Inhumans and with Cyclops. Why are we talking about sexuality? That plot point has zero to do with what these fake-ass straw Christians are doing. It's two completely unrelated stories mushed together. Now, you can see he's completely fucked up this house. So Bobby's dad is more pissed off than ever, which is reasonable. I mean, look at his house. Bobby's mom, on the other hand, tries to smooth things out and admits that they haven't given Bobby any credit and really don't know him. Then she says this isn't an easy process for us. The world says mutants are okay today, but that doesn't change the decades of thinking that they're not. Well, time out. Didn't the Purifier just say that everybody hates mutants? So mutants are simultaneously accepted and the most hated they've ever been? I see what Cena Grace is trying to do here. He's trying to point out that people who live in a world where homosexuality is accepted, but that they've never changed with the times, and that's fine. But just do that. Just tell that story. Stop hiding the commentary behind mutation, because you can't use mutation as a metaphor when you have Bobby going around telling people that he's gay. Just do it. Just come out of the closet. We're 3 issues deep and this is still going on. And then Bobby's mom says the dumbest shit in the book. I'll convince the big lug to come and see you at your job. Really? You want him to come into the middle of a fucking X-Men battle? That's what you want. His fat ass with the heart condition totally isn't gonna die. He's just gonna walk in there. Oh, look, this is really nice. Did she just shoot some shit out of her nipples? Please, don't show up at his job. I mean, if you want to show up at the school, that's fine. But pick a day when it isn't under attack. This is how the book ends. That's it. The entire thing was pointless. That battle that lasted for half the book didn't need to happen. You could take out the battle and the story really wouldn't change. This is the problem with this book. It has no point. It doesn't need to be set in the Marvel Universe. This could have been a subplot in the main X-Men book and you wouldn't know the difference and wouldn't care. Whatever, I'm just going to let it go, whatever. So this is the end of this book completely. There's nothing else to this book. If I had to give it a score, I say at best it's a C+. It's okay. You pass, but no one cares for it. No one's reading it. And just to illustrate this point, I checked the numbers on Comic-Con to see where this book stands. Comic-Con is this great resource for seeing how well or bad books are doing. Just for anyone who doesn't know, the numbers aren't the sales, but the solicitations for the books. These are the orders that have been placed by different retailers saying this is how many books we want. The higher the orders, the better the book is doing. The lower the orders, the worse the book is doing. So issue 1 for Iceman, despite all the hype, only got 34,000 solicits. That doesn't mean that they're all sold out. There are probably plenty of books still on the shelves. Issue 2, 22,000. Both these numbers come from the June 2017 listing. That's a 36% drop from issue 1 to issue 2 in the same month. Now, that really is not that bad. It's just a 40% drop. The problem is that you only started out with 34,000 copies. So you've already lost 12,000 in one issue. If you lose another 12,000, you'll be down to 10,000 copies a month. That's a 65% drop in 2 months. This is a book that nobody asked for, that nobody wanted. It's clearly not being supported. You can go online right now and look up Iceman comics and read all the glowing progressive reviews. They couldn't pat themselves on the back any harder. For them, it's like Crisis on Infinite Earths. It's like Age of Apocalypse. It's like V for Vendetta. It's the greatest comic story ever told. Nobody's buying the book. And that's all you need to know. And you see this with all these SJW progressive books. This is going to transfer to other books. It's not going to stay on Iceman. People are going to look at this book and go, this is what Marvel's putting out, and they're not going to touch any other X-Men titles. They may not go near a book that isn't strewn with this progressive nonsense just because of how craptacular SJW books are. That's the effect. It hurts Marvel as a business, and it hurts the industry as a whole. It turns people off of buying comics, and the Comic-Con numbers show it. But what do I know? I'm just some guy.